You're listening and watching the Strangers in Space podcast. I'm on it. And for the next 30 minutes, you're going to be listening to the Legacy members plus John as we talk about the latest episode of Doctor Who, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm Matt.
I'm John.
I'm JR. He did that deliberately, so I've had to leave the pause somewhere else instead, haven't I?
I forgot to leave the pause for the music. Sorry.
That was crap at the beginning. Do you want to do that again? Or is this
we're on video, Lee. This is it now.
This is it. It's intentionally amateur, so it puts the listener and viewer at their ease, knowing that they might think that they could do this.
Or maybe it's because as Matt
punk.
Or maybe it's because, as Matt previously confessed, he has nothing but utter disdain for the listener or viewer.
Well, that's a side issue, but that's fine. So we've now all just watched the first full-length Russell T Davies episode since John.
Yes,
since John.
No, I was asking when was the last time we saw it. That was End of Time Part 2.
Yes.
And what year was that in?
That was
2010.
Thursday 2010. Tuesday.
Okay, so 13 years. So what did we think? So should we start with the Next Time trailer? Because JR wants to talk about the Next Time trailer. JR, what did you think about the Next Time trailer?
I must confess, I was amused. I saw lots of posts before with people getting excited about what the Next Time trailer was going to reveal about that mysterious next episode, Wild Blue Yonder, and Russell T Davies pulled a fast one.
Well, it's turned up on YouTube, so I've seen it on YouTube. So as far as I can tell, there's a lot of sort of dusty rooms. There's a leaking air conditioner, and that's all we're getting as teasers for the Next Time trailer. And Donna screaming.
So if it's on YouTube, why didn't they put it on the episode?
I don't know.
Maybe they didn't have time for the slot. Starbeast was so full. Okay,
so let's talk about Starbeast. So we'll go around the table, the podcast table, and we'll talk about when we first saw Starbeast. And what we think of it now we're watching it again. So what did we think? So just in 2 sentences, give me your reactions. Lee, you haven't spoken in a year on this podcast. So let's go for Simon first. What did you think of the Starbeast?
I thought it was largely very good.
Okay. You've got a second sentence if you want.
And Catherine Tate was, of course, amazing.
And John?
I thought it was a good old-fashioned Russell T Davies season opener.
And a second sentence if you want it.
And Catherine Tate was also amazing.
And Lee?
It was a step in the past and a toe into the future. My second sentence is, Catherine Tate was really great, wasn't she?
Okay, so that's three positives. JR?
Well, I thought there was occasional sound and fury, and mostly lots of standing around, not saying very much, signifying very little. Except, second sentence, I loved the intent behind the way it resolved, but it was such another Deus Ex Machina in its execution. I kind of think that slightly undermines it again.
And for me, I think it's a rare moment when I can start to understand Catherine Tate and what she brings to the part, because I've never been a massive fan like Simon, but this one I was so relieved to see Catherine Tate in this, and I was all ready to hate Miriam Margolyes, to feel a bit like we've stepped back in time a bit, to feel a bit retrograde, but actually it was really good. Really good. I really liked it. So let's get into the nitty gritty. So the opening title sequence.
Oh, do you mean the pre-credits thing? Because it was pre-credits thing before we get there.
Hang on, JR's just made a face like a cat's anus, and I just want to make sure
that's his normal face, isn't it?
Whether that's him not liking the title sequence, or whether that's him not liking the question that I'm running the podcast on, and him going, well, I wouldn't have asked that question. I would have gone straight into the trans thing at the end. So, JR, what did you think of the title sequence?
I would go out and see the title sequence. I didn't like it much. It reminded me weirdly of like the Clocks one with Peter Capaldi, where the music was just a little bit heavy-handed, and the visuals were a nice idea, but actually in execution they didn't really quite go.
Initially,
so although it didn't remind, yeah, so that was kind of the feel I got off it, that it was a bit heavy-handed and it just didn't quite go.
to say initially there's like that cloud effect, so it looked like the Matt Smith one that had been colorized. I thought that
Yeah. But then it kept changing perspective, and the title sequence of Doctor Who is like, it is a tunnel that you go through, like, you know, the X-Wings at the end of Star Wars. You stay with the X-Wing. You don't keep going to side shot, close up, mid. It was like, what the hell is this in a Doctor Who title sequence? It didn't really work. It was weird.
So it's it's a bit like the second Matt Smith title sequence, which did exactly that, where it kind of went through different textures, and I kind of like it. Reminded me a bit of the Doctor Who trailer, Jodie Whittaker trailer thing, where the TARDIS goes through the logo, and you see the TARDIS sort of breaking through different things, going sideways.
That's the kind of thing, though. It did feel like this is for the specials. I don't know what the title sequence is going to be like for Shooty, but this felt like a little bit of an amalgam of other stuff that we've already seen. So I don't really remember it. It hasn't stuck with me. So it can't be brilliant. You know, it's not. It doesn't stay with us completely. But like you say, it's got all these different elements flying around. So maybe it's trying to bring it all together in one go, and it doesn't quite work.
I mean, that's a broader question. How much of this in this episode are just for the specials, and how much is going to be hung over? I'd be really amused if that TARDIS set was just for the three episodes, and then they kind of ditched it and came up with a tiny room for the Shooty Gatwa.
Cupboard.
Yeah. Any ideas? Do you think so, Lee? You don't think we're going to get this for Shooty Gatwa?
I don't think this title sequence is going to hang for the next series.
What about
we're going to get something new.
It looks expensive though, and there was nothing about it, because the logo kind of feels a bit 50th, 60th, because it's kind of a diamond logo, but there was nothing about the titles that screamed 60th. It just looked like a title sequence that would hang on.
No, it's just the Eccleston to Tennant thing, isn't it? It's just going to carry on through, I would have thought.
Yeah.
It's quite generic, and that's probably on purpose.
Being spoiler free, is the diamond logo staying with Shooty? Do we know?
Well, nobody's quite sure, but we think it is, because
everything's branded.
Yeah.
But no, not necessarily because of that, but because they did a special version of this logo for the 60th. So they've done a diamond version of the diamond logo that's specifically for the 60th, which means the non-diamond version of the diamond logo is the standard logo, which means that'll be for Shooty Gatwa.
I quite like the title sequence. I think it was different from Russell T Davis's. Russell T Davis stuck with one title sequence through his whole show running time. So to see something fairly dramatically different and upgraded, I didn't like the way the diamond logo appeared. There was a bit of a sort of a weird kind of flippy thing going on, whereas I thought it could materialize. But aside from that, I thought, what about the music, Simon? Have you given your opinion on the music yet?
I can't remember if I did.
I think you nodded when I said it was heavy-handed. So
yeah, it's all things to all people, isn't it? It's got a bit of everything, and particularly in the post credits version of it, as opposed to the pre one. It seems to have got bits of the Paul McGann theme in there, and it's got choirs, and it's just, it's that thing, that RTD thing of layering on top and top, a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and now it's kind of doing everything. So
there's something about the mix and the performance that needs to be slightly light, so that you've got a mixture between things that feel like they're being played by humans by hand and things that feel like they've been generated electronically, so that the two things marry together and feel like one organic whole where you can't quite place where the elements have come from. But this just feels like everything was, and I know it wasn't, but it feels like everything was electronically generated on synthesizers or on, so that the whole, nothing in it feels kind of organic. It didn't have anything that felt organic in it, weirdly.
Which is appropriate for the Doctor Who theme, isn't it?
Well, no, because the whole point of the TARDIS and the Doctor is that it's about this organic being and this inorganic machine that together form this sort of partnership. It's about the authentic and the inauthentic coming together.
Yeah,
and that's why when you have monsters like the Daleks and the Cybermen that give themselves over too much to the inauthentic, they're the villains. So the hero is the organic one.
Which is great. That's the Doctor Who theme, but I'm talking about the Doctor Who theme, which the whole point of the original theme is you couldn't tell if it was organic or inorganic, and it was synthetic, and it was weird, and you couldn't tell where the noises came from. So it kind of fits with the original intention of that, doesn't it?
No, but I'm saying it doesn't
get stuck on the opening title.
Before we've even this is us. We dive deep, right? But I'm saying I don't think it does sound like the original theme, because the original theme, everything was generated via weird methods, but oftentimes we just watched an Adventure in Space and Time, right, 2 days ago, and in there you've even got, and okay, this is an amalgamation of various different things, but you've got Verity Lambert running a key down a piano string. That's the organic component in the music that she put together. It's all created on different bits of tape that she puts together, but there are organic components in with the electronic components. And that's the whole point, is that you can't tell, that it sounds like a weird mixture of lots of different sources, but you can't put your finger on where any of them come from. I'm saying the new theme for this just sounded like somebody had put it together on a synthesizer.
So we'll get into it. Should we actually talk about the episode?
No. Let's talk about the TARDIS.
So we'll get to the TARDIS and we'll get to the details of the episode in a bit. But the first question I have is, so this is Russell T Davies coming back. We spent a lot of time anticipating whether this is going to be the same as Russell T Davies's previous incarnation as showrunner, or different, or what might be different, what the extra money will look like. So how did this feel overall? Did this feel like you just stepped back to 2005, or did it feel like a new thing? Did
it sounded exactly like
Tennant feel like a new Doctor? Spoiler alert!
It sounded exactly like what you just said it did, which is a 2005-2009 Doctor Who by Russell T Davies, which absolutely is, because of, you're straight in there with emotion, comedy, humour, brilliant family dialogue, all that. But then you've got this slightly bigger budget, this slightly wider feel, this slightly bigger feel that came with Jodie's kind of tenure, and David Tennant is slightly different. And it feels like they've matured, that it's 15 years on. It feels like it's just about the right place. It'd be interesting to know whether the feeling we're getting from these next 3 episodes, which are quite nostalgic mixed with the new, when we go into Shooty, whether that's going to feel completely different, or it's going to be like as if Shooty was in 2010 or something. That'll be the interesting part, to see if the budget pulls over to the next series. I have to say, before I go to John, because he hasn't spoken, and I know he hasn't spoken because I haven't heard the Welsh accent. Who's John? So sorry, Welsh Ian. Before I go to John, I have to say, before I saw this, I was anticipating this being my least favourite. And looking at the synopses and what I knew I was coming, I thought I would start liking them more and more with each progression. So I still suspect by the time Shooty Gatwa starts, I think that's when I'm really going to think, actually, this is new Doctor Who. This feels like a kind of not an unnatural. It's actually quite a comfortable sort of combination of nostalgia and new. But this particular episode, I was anticipating disliking, because I'm not a big fan of Miriam Margolyes. I decided over the last week that I'm not a big fan of Miriam Margolyes, and I just wasn't looking forward to Beat the Meat. But I was proved wrong in this. Just spoiler alert. John, what did you think? Were you taken back to 2005?
I think yes, because it's the same structures, it's the same kind of thing. If you didn't like Russell T Davies then, you wouldn't like him now. If you loved him back then, you'd love him now, because it's the same thing. It's a big jokes, it's big action. It acknowledged that passage of time. There was the early joke about David Tennant wearing that tight suit, which, as men of a certain age, I'm sure we all appreciated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
speak for yourself.
Well, shed it skinny. It was very nice that it just acknowledged that passage of time. David Tennant wasn't quite the same Doctor. There's not that kind of Time Lord victorious angst to the performance. It's a warmer performance, I think. It's more in tune with the human.
So is it because he wasn't always the Time Lord victorious performance?
Yeah, this is David
he sort of
Tennant
grew into
before,
that. So
yeah.
So is it? It's. I mean, he spent a lot of time in the role. I think it's the David Tennant performance from somewhere in his realm. Probably the Donna Noble series. It feels like they pinpointed that as being.
Yeah, that's
what Simon would say the Imperial phase.
Yeah, but that without the angst, I think. That's what they're going for. They're aiming for that feel because that is Doctor Who's most successful period in the modern era.
It's
possibly
Partners in Crime, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's what they've gone
this
for,
is what that
actor's
actor's doing.
And that,
Totally.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything very much different at all you can put your finger on, apart from what they used to resolve the story, which I suppose we'll come back to because that's got to be a conversation in its own right?
Yeah, there wasn't that much of the sad puppy face in there that you used to get. Maybe it's also appropriate, but nothing to overwhelm it. It was all happy. It was up. It was playing. It was playing those season opener notes. It's get that big audience on side.
At the risk of asking a leading question, Simon, did you laugh at this more than you laughed at any Chibnall episode? Did you laugh at the joke?
Do I really need to answer that? Yes, I did. Yeah. I thought it was No, what can I say? It was just the humour worked. I thought, but then look at who you've got delivering it. That's the thing.
Well, we talked about this yesterday when we talked about the Children in Need skit and how actually we felt that maybe Russell T Davies. So Stephen Moffat works perfectly in short 5-minute humour chunks that he can get. He's like a machine gun when it comes to comedy. Russell T Davies maybe doesn't work so well in 5-minute chunks, but when it comes to give him 50 minutes and characters to build on and time to develop like little jokes and witty dialogue, then it really works. And I laughed during this. JR, did you laugh?
In the right way.
No, JR didn't laugh.
Having said that, I was in the room with a 9-year-old who laughed a fair bit after about the halfway point. So there was no laughter up until about halfway. And then all of a sudden, I think he twigged with what the sense of humour was. But I just don't find Russell T Davies all that funny, frankly.
Are you saying that we all have a 9-year-old sense of humour?
It's not unfair.
I'm just saying that my own particular sense of humour is not aligned with Russell T Davies, I guess.
So I
don't dislike him or what he does. I just find him a little heavy-handed, and just about everything I do, I find he does. I find heavy-handed, and I don't like heavy-handed.
I agree. He is heavy-handed. I don't think he's subtle in anything he does. But in this instance, I think possibly it worked, and it is a contrast. What is the contrast between this and Chibnall? Because not in terms of quality or in terms of good or bad, but what's the fundamental difference? Because there is a difference. There's a different feel to it.
I don't think there's as much difference as you think there is, because I think Chris Chibnall kind of modelled himself on RTD, and I think most of the elements are pretty much the same. I think there was an execution issue through the Chibnall years. I don't think that was down to Chibnall so much as it was something on the production in Cardiff. I think in Cardiff, when Chibnall was there, I think they were aiming to make something that was more like prestige television. I don't think Doctor Who really works as prestige television. I don't think this felt like prestige television. I think it was turning its back on that. I think quite deliberately so. So it still looked nice. I don't think it looked as nice as when Chris Chibnall was there. I don't think it looked anything like as nice as when Chris Chibnall was there, frankly. I thought it looked a bit crap, if I'm honest, for quite a significant part of it. And I think that's the difference. I think with Chris Chibnall, They made a very big effort in the production office in Cardiff to make it look nice at the expense of the sort of down-to-earth nature of the programme. Now they've turned their back on making it look nice in that way, and they've brought back the down-to-earth thing.
And
But I think that's just a matter of tone, really.
I think the Chris Chibnall era feels very cold in comparison. It's kind of cold and brooding, you know, what with the way it was filmed, but also the soundtrack, the score was very empty and very moody, much like you would get, you know, in a murder mystery or something like that. And it didn't have the music, certainly didn't have the broad strokes. You know, you were absolutely knew when there was supposed to be a funny moment. You know, it was that thing of
It's weird. It didn't have the Chibnall era. It was distant. It felt very distant to me. There was no. I could never connect with it. Within about 5 minutes of this, whether it be Catherine Tate and David Tennant, I don't know, but I just felt suddenly I get all the characters. I find it funny. It was funny. It was properly funny. There's loads of very funny moments. The whole thing with Donna's mum slapping the doctor in the face, it's just, you know, beautiful, really comedic slapstick stuff. And that's kind of what you want. You wouldn't get somebody slapping Jodie Whittaker around the face, would you?
Without complaints.
No, not without complaints. Yeah, but why not? I mean, it could have been done in a clever, funny way. But what I'm trying to say is that was never tried. Those things, it was too sincere. The Chibnall was trying to do something that Doctor Who just isn't. It isn't. It has to have that element of fun.
John, if you could make a note for the podcast records, Lee would like to see Jodie Whittaker get slapped round the face.
Yeah,
then we'll just...
it's on the record. Victorious.
It could be a tentacled creature. It doesn't have to be a man.
Yeah.
There were complaints
John,
when Clara slapped
Did you
the
make a
11th
note
Doctor.
that Lee would like to see a tentacled creature slapping Jodie Whittaker around the face? Because that sounds slightly wrong.
There were complaints when Clara slapped the 11th Doctor in Journey to this, somewhere in season 7, I think. And so I don't know whether there'll be complaints from the same people about this. I don't know if I don't think it was complaints to the BBC. I think it was just fans online. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Everybody takes an issue with something.
Yeah. It's comedic slapstick. It's fine.
And I mean, for me, the difference structurally between Chibnall era and this is that we've been rewatching as a family kind of episodes to catch up, just to bring ourselves up to the anniversary in the right spirit. It's that the Doctor isn't a passive character here, and you watch too many Jodie Whittaker episodes, and she's in the background. And the balance here is, again, it's a similar thing to what happened in season 1 when when Russell first wrote it. He understands how to make the Doctor a proactive character, but how to bring other characters in to advance the plot and to resolve it.
I don't think it's a case of understanding. I think it's a choice. Chris Chibnall made a deliberate choice to take Jodie Whittaker back to the early days of Doctor Who, where the Doctor is somebody who goes around the universe looking at it, rather than looking for, emo problems to have. But Russell T Davies writes Doctor Who as YA. He did in the sort of 2005 to 2010 run. Except we didn't know the expression YA then, but that's what he was doing. It was all about Rose and her on-off love affairs with all the various different blokes who came on board the TARDIS, and it was all about Rose's issues. It was very much YA stuff, dealing with the YA stuff through metaphor in the science fiction. And again, that's what he's done here with this Rose, which we'll come back to. I don't think he foregrounded Rose enough in this, actually, to make that work. But I suppose that's an issue we'll come back to. But that's what Russell T Davies does. He aims Doctor Who very much at the sort of 13 to 19 age group. And I don't think Chris Chibnall was looking at that age group. So I don't think Chris Chibnall was interested in that sort of emo side of the Doctor. But that's a deliberate choice. It's not an accident of not being capable. It's just a deliberate choice.
That may have been the tone of the series, not aiming at the 13 to 19-year-olds. But Jodie Whittaker was a 13 to 19-year-old Doctor. She was definitely that to me. It's just I don't think there was enough given to her to play with to show it off even more so. In that first episode, she comes out really excited about science. She's kind of like the school kid that's just discovered they love chemistry, and after that, it's everything around. It's the tone just doesn't seem to suit the character.
But what you're particularly missing there, Lee, is not just 13 to 19. It's 13 to 19 YA. which is the whole
YA.
emo
What, are they
thing.
from Yorkshire? YA.
No, Jodie Whittaker was for people without the YA thing, whereas Rose Tyler and the new Rose, what are we calling her? Rose Noble?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rose Noble is very much
Not-
in the YA school, where it's YA specifically uses science fiction metaphors for issues that teenagers are having. In the Jodie Whittaker years, they didn't use those metaphors to illustrate those issues, and that's the particular difference. And we're back to doing that now.
Yeah.
So I think
although she was, in a sense, a teenager at heart.
Yes, but it's the companions, Lee.
Yeah.
So I think we're all agreed that
Yeah.
That Chris Chibnall was anti-drama and Russell T Davies is pro drama, and this actually felt dramatic, which was for me it felt strange, because I was watching it thinking this feels nostalgic, and this feels like they brought it back to Saturday night. But actually I was watching it thinking you don't see this on Saturday nights, and you don't see it any more on Saturday nights. This is actually quite new. This sort of, JR said it wasn't prestige television, and I think I agree with that. Is Russell T Davies isn't trying to make The Wire, or he isn't trying to make something sort of something critically long-lived. He's trying to make kind of popcorn, colourful, kind of disposable television for Saturday.
Tell you what it is.
And this is in a different way from how he made it before. There's something different with this from how he made it before, and maybe it's because we've had an absence on Saturday nights of this kind of stuff for so long.
But it's Hollyoaks with science fiction is what it is. Hollyoaks with science fiction and a budget. It's sort of, or it will be. It's not at the moment because it's two middle-aged characters and one of their mums, basically, with the three main characters in this. Rose, actually, she had a couple of nice scenes at the start, and then she barely features until the end, does she? She just disappeared.
So I agree with.
She gets a hell of a lot of expository dialogue if you look at it, and that's it.
Right early on, and then it goes, doesn't it?
But also, she acts as a central metaphor for a lot of things, which I think is probably not a great thing. And I was all for the de-wheelchairification of Davros back on the Children in Need skit, but in this case, the trans characteristics of this particular character, they're kind of, so with Jodie Whittaker, and I was having a conversation with a friend, my only friend, on WhatsApp, and we were talking about how successful or not Jodie Whittaker was, and how he thought she should have been more maternal, and they should have made her more feminine and brought out. They should have run with the idea of her being female. And I really like the fact that they just made her a woman and didn't really do much with that. They just made her a woman, and we had to accept it. And she was really the Doctor after that. And I think making this character into this kind of, I don't know. Well, she's kind of a metaphor that drives the conclusion of the episode. She was a metaphor that kind of connected her with the alien as well. She was a metaphor that connected her with the Doctor. But she was a really strong character. She had a really good actress, and I wanted to see more of her, and I wanted her to go on the TARDIS.
I have to be honest, and I don't know, maybe I need to watch it again, but I found her performance really quite wooden.
Oh, okay.
But I might need to watch it before. Maybe it was a very subtle performance and I wasn't picking up on.
I wonder if that's a symptom of her not actually having much to do and a lot
quite
to
possibly
say.
Yeah.
I have to say there was a moment when I thought, oh, she's not very good, and then the very next line she delivered, I thought, oh no, actually she's much better than I thought she was. That was just a weird line delivery. But I think, as Matt says, I think the problem there is she probably only gets about 10 lines in the entire script or something. I'm probably exaggerating here, but it felt like across 60 minutes she was barely used. She finds the meep, she sticks it in the shed, she gets found out, then she comes back at the end for the denouement.
I mean, the emotional heart of the whole thing is elsewhere, so she doesn't have that much to play with. Is the issue, I think? There, she's more a representation than a character in her own right at times. I think. Which
the trouble
was,
they had to keep sidelining the other characters so you could get back to resolving Donna's issue with the meta crisis.
Yeah.
So what
so it's like literally they were bundling characters out of doors so that they could just get Donna on her own with the Doctor. Happened twice where they literally bundled the other characters out of the way to leave the pair of them standing there together. It was a bit, well, like I say, it was heavy-handed.
So we'll get to the denouement. We will get to it. So what did we think about? So I really liked Catherine Tate in this, and I don't know why. Maybe I've just been shaped by the series since, because we've had like Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, Arthur Darvill. We've had all of these characters, and then suddenly it feels like a refreshing change to me.
I mean, when you talk about Catherine Tate, you go back to the time when she was going to join, and everyone thought it was going to be a dreadful, well, not everyone, but most people thought it was going to be a dreadful idea because she was known for her comedy, but she wasn't known as an actress. And the thing that struck me with this is an incredibly nuanced performance, and there were different modes, and she was performing according to the context of the scene, just like a normal human being would be. Yeah. That there were times when she was soft and there were times when she was hard and defensive. I mean, going back to the thing with Rose, I think you've all got a point that we knew a lot about how Donna felt about Rose, but we didn't know a lot about what Rose felt about Donna or anything else, really. We didn't really know who she was. And she was pretty much a spectator in a thing which should have kind of been centered around her. Or maybe it's kind of maybe she was sidelined on purpose, that that at the end that she's the one, you realize that the whole story is about her.
Yeah, so that it can come as a surprise.
Yeah. And also there are other episodes, presumably a lot of these characters come back in later episodes, we assume. I'm not spoiling anything, Lee. Come back, Lee. What's Lee doing?
I don't know.
Tearing a hole in the fabric of reality.
Sorry, have you finished?
Yes, yeah, no, we didn't say anything. We were waiting to find out what you were up to.
Yeah,
I was just plugging the laptop in. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
There's some comedy shuffling for the audio version of this podcast.
I thought your anti-spoiler thing was such that you had actually turned your back on.
We're on video, so Lee,
into me.
Lee, take your headphones off just for a second, and I'll give you the nod when to put them back on. Okay?
Got it.
At least spoiler policy is now that he doesn't want spoilers from an episode he's already watched.
Well, so the next episode, Wild Blue Yonder, we can pretty much guarantee there'll be no, except maybe there'll be a scene at the end where the Doctor and Donna come back and you see those other characters right at the very end or something.
Yeah.
But Wild Blue Yonder is set in the future in outer space or whatever. Yeah. So you won't get the rest of the Donna's family in that. And then the Toymaker one. So it looks like Russell T Davies has literally, with the 3 specials, done the thing that he does. One in the present, one in the future, one in the past. So the Toymaker one looks like it's going to be set in Victorian times, something like that. So I don't think the family are going to be
modern times. That unit headquarters isn't in Victorian
Some of
London.
it will be. Some of it will be, but I wonder if largely it'll be. Yeah,
it's a toy shop. It's Victorian style, isn't it? I don't know about going back.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be set in past. I think this is going to be set back in the present with unit.
Yeah.
Can Lee put his headphones back on now?
Oh well, I was just going to on that. Well, yeah, it could be, but I don't see. It's Russell T Davies. I think a lot of it would be set in the past somehow. I can't see it not being because of the way he does things. But yeah, it'll come back to modern day for the last sort of 15 or 20 minutes, perhaps. That's how I see it. Lee.
And then Lee took the cherry and he pulled it right out of his. Oh, hi, Cherry. Hi, Lee. Sorry.
Sorry, we were just Twin Peaks, Mr. Barber.
We were just in the middle of Dr. Barber, just in the middle of an anecdote. What about David Tennant? So is he the same as he was? Is he different?
Pretty much the same. Or is he the same?
Well, John said that there's a warmer performance there, and there is.
I think so.
He's older. He's more mature as an actor. He's done a lot of other jobs since then, and to come back and do the Doctor's not easy. When he did the 50th, I thought he felt like he didn't want to be there. It didn't quite ring with me, that one. But this time round, not quite so much. But this time round, he was enjoying himself again. He knew he was in the job that he really, really loves. And there are moments where he flings around and he can just talk and chuck his arms everywhere and spin around and ballet everywhere. that just said, "This, he's back. This is the kind of David Tennant we really like and we really love." And he knows he's back as an actor. He's really, really loving it and enjoying it. But he's not being so hammy and over the top that it's just eating away at the screen like he used to. I think it's much more enjoyable. I think actually, JR, you've never really rated his acting. So what about this time round?
Oi, I'm leading this. JR, what did you think about it this time round?
Well,
Lee comes back after a year off and thinks he could just direct the conversation. He's not a legacy.
I've got to say, he was as irritating as he's always been. I was slightly less irritated by him because I know there's only 3 episodes, and so it doesn't have to be every week for 13 weeks for 3 years. So I wasn't as irritated as I expected to be, because I guess I had that in my mind. He was 15 years older, so yeah, his performance was, informed by the fact that he's 15 years older. But I think it was exactly the same performance he gave, just given by somebody who's 15 years older than he was in 2008. I didn't see any difference in the sort of motivation.
There was a moment when he's with Catherine, and they're between the 2 parts, and he says, "Why this? Why does it have to be this way?" And he really shouts it out and growls it out. That to me feels like that's
exactly like what he did at the end of Time.
Yeah, that's the end of Time.
I don't think so. I think there's even more weight this time round. There's just a little bit more weight. I believed him a bit more.
I'm on Team JR with this. It felt like David Tennant had been on a treadmill basically for 15 years. Yeah, and but Mike, the difference I have with JR is I quite like David Tennant's performance before, and now we've seen so much of David Tennant the person since he stopped being Doctor Who, because he's done staged and he's done other things, and we're seeing him on talk shows and interviews. And so much of this, you can kind of see David Tennant coming through, and you could tell that this is actually David Tennant poking through the Doctor. And it's different from other. That's what I like about it. So I agree with JR that it's almost exactly the same performance.
I've been away way too long. You are agreeing with JR. What the hell is going on? I'm agreeing
with JR with one hand, but I'm slapping him in the face with the other, because I'm saying I liked David Tennant.
And it's difficult to do that.
It's different from other Doctors coming back as well. When Patrick Troughton comes back, he's playing a slightly different character, and then and I think that's because other people are writing him. But obviously, Russell T Davies is writing for the David Tennant Doctor. I'm a bit disappointed in a way that it wasn't a completely. I would have given him a Scottish accent.
I thought that. I did. Yeah.
Same.
It feels a bit like, because it's Russell T Davies writing something that he wrote 15 years ago for an actor, or 2 actors, several I suppose, but 2 mainly that he wrote for 15 years ago. It does feel a little bit sometimes like he's doing a cover version of his own material. So Lee said the slap was a great bit of slapstick. I thought the slap just felt like an old joke being regurgitated. And I felt that several times, that he was kind of, because when you write it continuously, week after week, you develop and continue and evolve things. When you come back to it after 15 years and try to pick up where you left off, it felt like he was repeating things instead of evolving things. So I don't think that was a big issue, but I just felt there was a slight issue where some of it felt like he was just repeating things rather than evolving them.
That's the best of David Tennant, though, isn't it? If you get slapped in the face by a mum, that's what you want.
The joke with the slap wasn't the slap. The joke with the slap is Tennant's reaction saying, "Oh, it's just like old times," or whatever he said. So they're making a joke out of recycling the same joke before.
Sure, but
so that's on purpose. But there were jokes in here that I found funnier than I found Russell T Davies before. And it might just because when Moffat came along, I thought, oh well, this is properly funny jokes Moffat's writing. Not just the broad stuff that Russell T Davies wrote. But now I'm watching this and feeling quite relieved that these jokes are actually landing for me. And part of that is
Simon, what do you think of David Tennant?
He's the same but different.
So the Star
That's my
Beast,
review. I
Yeah.
liked it. I mean, there was a nice line where he said about, he suddenly said about loving. Did he say loving? Was it loving
Yeah.
Donna at one point?
Oh, that's new.
Yeah, that's new, and I thought that was lovely because that harks back to Jodie. That's where he's picked up from the Jodie vibe, and you feel like there's an evolution there, which is great. But then you kind of got a bit hit over the head because then he started saying he loved everyone. But maybe that's a joke as well. I don't know. But I like that. Go on.
I think because you've got the reference in there to say, yes, I've been all these people since as well. So it's definitely trying to play on the idea that he's not the same person, even if it's only in the dialogue.
And he's relieved of the angst with the Time Lords and what have you.
Yes.
I do find,
to a degree.
I was just going to say, I do find with Russell T Davies, a lot of the sentiment is absolutely, sublime. But I just find his delivery of the sentiment, well, like I say, go back to what I said before, I just find his delivery of the sentiment a bit heavy-handed. And I find, and we've said this so many times, Russell T Davies doesn't seem to be great at making the plot hang together the way the narrative does. So if you think of the narrative as being the character's journey, the characters have a brilliant journey. But if you think of the plot as being the story beats they have to go through to experience that journey, the plot doesn't hang together the way the narrative does. And I just wish Russell T Davies would take, because he obviously doesn't care about the plot, he cares about the narrative, and that's fine. But if he cared about the plot as much as he does about the narrative, he could make television that works on all these other levels as well.
I think that's the same as Robert Holmes in the old series, though, because Robert Holmes essentially has one ending, and it's okay. It's going to take you on an absolute thrill ride for 90 minutes or however long it is, but when it gets to that limit, essentially it'll really just stop.
Not disagreeing with you, John. But then I think if Robert Holmes was able to write a final episode that was as good as his opening episodes, he would have been a much better writer than he was.
Absolutely, I thoroughly agree.
What did we think of Beat with the Meat?
Great.
The design, the look.
Yeah, everything, and translated. Looking at the picture of the comic character, brilliantly transferred over. I didn't know where the puppetry ended and the CGI began, which I think is a massive thing, because sometimes you'll watch these things, you go, oh, CGI puppet, and I couldn't tell. And the performance of the character, and as Matt said, Miriam Margolyes was perfectly cast. I don't think the comedy came off quite as well as it could. The little meeps felt like an afterthought rather than actually working. I thought the time, I don't know how you feel, Lee, with your comedy bones, but the timing seemed slightly off on some of those. There
was one particular moment where they're walking through
a
bloke's house.
Yes.
And it's almost like a bit pointless. I didn't quite understand why that was supposed to be a funny moment. Obviously, there's a guy there just doing whatever he's doing. They were walking past, and the guy goes, Meep goes, Meep. But the timing was off, and the whole joke was a bit pointless unless he's doing something that's connected.
I thought that was one time I got that joke. I thought it was completely superfluous, just a double meep, just right at the end. Like they've all said something, and so this little furry character just thinks, I'm going to say something as well.
Yeah, you might have it.
Yeah, but the meeps are a punch. They're a comic beat, and you got to time them right, I think. But wasn't it good? I thought, because we've all read Star Beast, right? And the idea, I think the voice in my head was almost exactly as I was hearing on the screen. That was quite amazing. As soon as it opened its mouth, I was like, oh, this is exactly.
And the transformation was brilliant.
Yeah.
Where the face just changed. Again, I mean, translating from the comic, but I just thought it was the design and everything. It just worked really, really well. I think from that point on, Miriam Margolyes was nasty. Exactly what it should be doing.
I was hoping for a bigger gun, a more kind of comical Rocket Raccoon style gun come out, but apart from that,
I think that's when I understood the Miriam Margolyes casting, was when it turned bad, and her performance changed. So I was kind of on board with that. JR?
Oh, great.
Okay. So what
is he feeling all right?
But I tell you, the meep, and it's not Beep the Meep, is it? It's just the meep in this. Why have they dropped beep?
Once. The beep of the meeps, wasn't it, at one point?
But they
so
never.
It's like a rank rather than a name.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't know why they dropped that, because there's no reason for that to be dropped, I don't think. But here was my takeaway from that, is like, so I have read the comic, but not for decades, right? So there was no story. We didn't have any story tonight. It literally was Meep drops, find Meep, Meep's in shed, soldiers come for Meep, Meep gets to the spaceship, Doctor unmasks Meep. 20 minutes. Russell T Davies always does this. 20 minutes in the spaceship at the end. One set, one scene at the end. Just went on and on and on. And then you get another 5-minute coda where the Doctor and Donna are just not talking about very much for too long. So this goes back to what I was saying about the plot. When they discovered there was no Meep in the spaceship, I wanted there to be like a 10-minute thing where, oh, there's the Meep. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, this character's going to find the Meep. Rose is going to find the Meep. Oh, no, she's not. Oh, what's going to happen now? Where's the Meep hiding now? No, it's like, oh, there's the Meep. Right, now it's in the shed. It's like everything happened so fast because Russell T Davies wanted to get to the character beats that the plot beats just didn't happen. And it turned out there was no story. So this was my question. Surely in the comic strip there was a lot more story than this, wasn't there?
There was, because it had to go for so many weeks, didn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, it was.
I think the essence of it,
it was
the
probably
heart of it
as
was there.
simple as that. Yeah, that's not complicated.
I mean, that is essentially the heart of the story, isn't it? If you're reading the synopsis for the Starbeats, that is the story. But
I wanted the tension. There was no tension in any of it.
Yeah. I just wonder whether the average audience member would pick up on that.
Well, I didn't.
Because we're analysing
because they've all seen E.T. and they've all seen Gremlins, so they all know that the first half of the story is between the alien landing or the whatever it is, between you finding out that something's arrived and where you get to properly meet the thing and understand it.
Yeah.
But here it was the thing's arrived. Oh, there's something arrived. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I was surprised at that actually. Yeah, you're right. As soon as she pulled the bin up, and I thought, oh, where's that ET moment of that building up of suspense? There wasn't, was there? It was just like, there it is.
And then immediately from there to the shed, so there was no build up of any kind of suspense or tension around it at all.
I mean, it would have been better, wouldn't it? I mean, we're not writing it, so but if we did write it, I would have her discover him in the shed with her toys.
But surely the bottom line is that we didn't really think about this until JR started telling us that there wasn't really a story. When I watched it, I didn't think, oh, they've just found Beep the Meep. I just thought, oh, that's fine. They found it so they can get on with other things.
No,
and I didn't get to the end thinking.
I didn't get to
the end of the episode thinking I haven't watched something. I thought I'd watched something disposable, but then I always do with Russell T Davies and most of modern Doctor Who. I feel like I'm probably not going to return to this multiple times for the rest of my life. I feel like I've seen something colourful on a Saturday.
But that's what we do on this podcast. We delve into the why is it disposable.
Yeah,
and here I am saying why it's disposable.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, but I don't think for me that's a criticism of the episode, because for me the episode was doing something other than trying to be prestige television.
It's not
trying
like
to be
me to do a
Saturday
music
night television.
It's not like me to use a musical analogy, but Russell T Davies writes pop music. It's disposable pop music, and the water cooler conversation the next day is, did you watch Doctor Who? Yes, I really enjoyed it, and that's where it ends.
And also, I think the important thing now is Doctor Who.
You're saying that this is like ABBA with their avatars, right? That's what's happening. David Tennant and Catherine Tate are avatars. Is that what you're saying?
So now he's creating. It feels like he's creating a kind of a strong foundation that's not necessarily to raise the viewing figures, because it doesn't really work like that anymore, but raise the profile of Doctor Who in the media. And looking briefly at the reaction to this, everybody's very positive about it, and it feels like something's returned. And once that foundation's been solidified, then spin-offs start happening. And then that whole Whoniverse kind of Marvel branding starts making sense, rather than just being on the front of anything Doctor Who-ish. And then suddenly Doctor Who gets another 20 years worth of life, which is, is nice for me. What did we think of the TARDIS?
Ready for a wheelchair?
Can I give my opinion first? Because I haven't.
Go on. Yeah. This is what I do. I throw an opinion out and then get people to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
know.
it.
I know what you do. I thought it was really good. I was for the first time. I was so two sides of my brain. One thinking that's really empty and clinical and doesn't have the personality of. Still my favourite TARDIS is the Capaldi TARDIS with the contra-rotating discs and the library around the edge. This felt really empty, but I saw it and my first reaction was, my God, that's a big set. Compared to, again, unfortunately, compared to the Chibnall set, which felt like it could have been on Lime Grove Studio D, to be perfectly honest.
If you're going to build a bridge over a railway track for somebody who's able-bodied, it's a short up and down and across. If you need somebody in a wheelchair or a bike, it's a very, very long route up, back, and then to the top. This is designed for something in the future that's obviously going to happen on the TARDIS, and it has to be wheelchair accessible. This is what I think.
Okay.
I mean, maybe the unit woman's going to come on board at some point. I don't know, but it feels like it's an accessible TARDIS.
I'm not sure that's true, because you could just have put the console at ground level.
Maybe.
So yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. But I think
for Daleks.
But the way they have done it has made it that as well. But I think it's just a choice to make it as big as possible, to shout money, just to scream money at the viewer.
I did love how David Tennant ran around it, though. That's exactly what I found that
so irritating.
But that's the first thing you do. That's a human reaction.
I really like
it. The guy go, yes.
I really like the gangways around it, the wheelchair accessible gangways around it. Felt like they were kind of Escher-like, so they kind of, you couldn't quite tell, they were sort of twisting and turning around.
But this is also fantastic for the crew, isn't it? So they can fling themselves around with their cameras and things, and they can be anywhere in that TARDIS. It's big enough also for a drone. There's all kinds of things you can do in that place. That's going to make it really interesting.
Yeah, but that's kind of it. There are lots of things you can do in that space, and they didn't do any.
Yeah.
So it's just a big space.
You can play Connect 4 on the wall for a start.
I mean, in physical terms, there's nothing in it. It's just a big empty space with nothing going on. Even the Matt Smith one had you can go under the TARDIS, and there was all sorts of stuff going on down there. This was just a big empty space. So yeah, for me, I don't think it did work. I mean,
Coffee Machine was good.
I love the fact the great big empty space with all these gangplanks and stuff. That was great. But if they'd have made something of it, if they'd made it look like a space that you can live in, but it didn't look like a space you could live in.
They should have made it like Harry Potter, where they just swing around all the time, these stairs.
Yeah.
Simon, you're an artist.
Am I?
Yes. So moving on.
I do wonder. I wonder if the lady from Unit will end up coming on board the TARDIS. There we go. You've got accessibility.
Sure, yeah.
So it's possible.
Talked about it yet.
They have said
that
they've made the TARDIS accessible. That's something that they've said.
Right. Okay.
But you will get a long shot of somebody pushing themselves. Not they'll have to push themselves up the ramp. So it will take ages to get to the console.
It won't if you're the unit lady, because that is a James Bond wheelchair.
So you're saying a rocket-powered wheelchair, and it will just like
Yeah, Matt. They use this thing in TV programs they call editing.
Well, yes,
they don't always. There were some real longueurs in this episode where they could have done with a bit of editing.
You set Jay off again.
Hey, can we talk about the new? If we didn't think the screwdriver was the big magic button, before, it's definitely the big magic button now, isn't it?
Okay, JR, what did you think of the new sonic screwdriver functions, and did you like it?
100% yes. The sonic screwdriver is an instrument that was made by an advanced civilization. It would be the most ridiculous effing thing in the world if all it was capable of was resonating concrete. Yes, it should have every function you could possibly imagine it having.
Just as a side, that's another joke I really liked, was when he was resonating concrete in the loft, and one of the characters goes, "It's mortar, actually."
Was that a Narnia moment? Was it The Magician's Nephew where the characters go through the different lofts to get to the next house, to get into Uncle Diggory's
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
So anybody else like the so what did they think of? So he was using it as a kind of a view screen for.
Well, when they first started messing around, the view screen kind of worked, and I thought, oh, this is good. This cuts corners. That's good. He doesn't have to look for a laptop every 3 seconds. And then the other thing is the shielding, and I thought that could have gone one way or the other. It could have been, oh, this is over the top. This can do everything. Is going to get out of every situation. But actually, I thought it was very clever the way he did it because it was quite slowly done.
Oh,
He
no,
did one,
yeah.
and then he went out, and then he did another, and then he got them around the corner, and they all went up the stairs, and then it shattered. And I thought, actually, yeah, that's quite good. That's
I was kind of a little bit,
more
oh
realistic.
God, this screwdriver does everything. And then, but the moment he started literally manhandling it and pushing it along with his hands, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, that
So-
was really nice. And
so-
I tell you about
yeah.
the thing about instead of a laptop, he's got a screen that's in the air in front of him. Isn't that exactly what you'd expect Gallifreyan technology to be?
Yes.
From his little pocket device, he has a screen that's a hologram in front of him, and then he can put it away again afterwards, and it doesn't take up, the size of a book in his pocket, but it's just the size of a small device like a phone that we fit in our pockets. People complain about this. We've got phones in our pockets that take photos and will do video calls and can look up any dictionary in any language in the world, and we say, oh no, the Doctor shouldn't have a sonic screwdriver that can do more than resonate.
I like the fact that
I
JR thinks the height of technology is having a dictionary that gives
Yeah.
you any word in the world.
JR,
in any language, Lee. That was
Any
the point.
language.
In any language.
JR can get on the grinder with just one press of a button. It's like some miracle of the modern
He
world.
doesn't have to press the button; it's face recognition.
So the only other thing that
I don't know, Matt. I'm a very attractive man. I can't help it if I get the attention.
the only other thing that's I'm not going to go there. The only other thing
I know you're not going to
You're
go
not
there.
thinking
You
about
don't pay
JR
the fee.
grinding, are you?
we anticipated something that might blow Lee's tiny mind before the episode was on, was the fourth wall breaking at the beginning. How did that pan out? Because the fourth
You've said it
wall
before.
is broken at the
Said it
beginning.
before.
It was terrible.
Okay, there we go.
It was there for the Disney audience, right?
Yeah.
But it was reiterated so often through the episode. After about half an hour, I was starting to think, there's something going on here. There's no way that Donna can still be suffering a meta crisis because they've mentioned it 17 times now.
I
They
quite
did-
like
it
the
was-
fact it was confined to one little bit, and I think that helps. It wasn't
It's
like
not different to Love and Monsters,
It was
is it?
all right.
they weren't doing a love
Yeah.
story throughout the episode and
No,
narrating.
I
what was
thought it was a bit of a waste of money, and also the CGI was abysmal. When he was standing in front, I was thinking, "Is there something wrong with my telly? What's going on here?"
Actually, I did think that was a little bit weird
Yeah.
when he's standing in front of the nameless kind of burning thing.
It looked like that Doctor Who game that went on. What was that? What was that game where you had different characters and what have you? I can't remember. It's a mobile
Okay.
game.
Destiny of
Okay.
the Doctors.
No, not that far back, Lee.
Was
but
it
yeah, it could might as well have
Attack?
been.
Was it Minds of Terror?
No,
I think the point of it is, it was fine, but it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
It seems like it felt like they'd added it on in order to explain all
Yeah.
the stuff that they explained about 5 times during the episode anyway. So it felt like it was there to explain something to an audience that didn't need to have this thing explained to them.
Yeah.
So it felt
It
heavy-handed.
does make sense. It's for a new audience. I totally got that when I was looking at it, thinking, "Oh, I know what this is for. This is Paul McGann's Doctor explaining everything in the first 3 minutes of his intro." It's the same thing, but it was just him standing in front of that really bad bit of CGI, which is a shame because you didn't need that. He could have just been standing in a white space or in the TARDIS, or I don't know.
It felt like an afterthought rather
Yeah,
than
it did. Yeah.
rather than something that was integrated. But before we score it, because we're getting up to we've now been going longer than the episode in true Strangers in Space stroke Blue Box style.
Matt, there's no limit.
No, I
None of
know,
us have
but
got a curfew.
there's
I
a
thought it
limit
was
to
60
my
minutes.
there's a limit to my
Right, okay.
patience, and my
Matt
dog.
said half an hour, and we've been going for
Yeah,
an
but
hour. So he
my
was
dog
wrong.
woke me up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 4 o'clock in the morning to go out for a wee last night. So I'm feeling.
Who woke you up? JR did.
No, my dog.
Oh,
I told you, Lee. he
That's
doesn't
what
pay
I
the
call
fee.
JR.
He's not getting. I'm not nudging Matt awake. Not fair.
No, he sleeps at the foot of the bed, and if he wants a wee, he just taps my foot, and I have to let him out of the garden.
I do
We are
not.
talking
Before
about
he goes
JR,
any
he's amazing.
further, I do not do that.
No, sometimes he just pisses in the bedroom. It's annoying.
I don't do that either.
But before we score this episode, I think we should all say, because we ended on a slight downbeat note with the 4-4
Can we just
break.
spend 2 minutes talking about the
Yep.
sort of trans thing?
Yep. Sorry.
The Rose character and the way they used binary, non-binary to solve the plot.
I didn't really understand that because it sort of went over my head.
Well,
at the time.
I don't think
Normally
you were
it-
supposed to understand it. It
I
was a
roughly-
Deus Ex Machina.
It felt like they'd basically the whole Time Lord Metacrisis thing had diffused because she'd had a child who happened to be binary, and they both then understood how to deal with it, and then they released it because they knew how to let go of things because they were female.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
I thought that was actually a lovely moment, and I
Yeah.
thought that was nicely seeded through the episode. That
Yeah.
it felt. I tell you what, it reminded me of. It reminded me of the resolution to Last of the Time Lords. Everybody talks about Russell's Deus Ex Machinas. The end of Last of the Time Lords is the one case where it's not a Deus Ex Machina, because the thing that put Harold Saxon in charge in the first place is the thing that they use against him to get him off that throne at the end of the story. So it's the one case where it's not a Deus Ex Machina, and then the Doctor rises into the air like some kind of airborne Jesus, and it looks like a Deus Ex Machina, but it's not. Same thing happened here, except it kind of was a Deus Ex Machina because the science was even more nonsense. And they didn't seed the science through the episode, but what they did seed through the episode, I thought, was the character stuff. And I thought that ending properly worked emotionally. So I thought that was the best part of the episode, frankly.
And it also picked up on what Jodie Whittaker has brought to Doctor Who, because it's turned the character into basically a non-binary character.
Absolutely.
I
And
don't know whether I was maybe I'm more intelligent than most people on the planet. I don't know, but I seem to see this already. I don't really
Let's
want
assume
to.
not.
It felt heavy-handed and a bit kind of over the head, but I got it, and I think it's the whole thing worked perfectly well. But I just thought you don't have to keep banging it in, or do you?
Yeah.
Are people not really with
But
it?
it-
Or
I don't think it did though.
No,
I don't think
I
it did.
didn't.
You
I
don't
didn't
think
feel
it did?
like I
No,
didn't.
like the
Because
fact
the
you had
Doctor
that
is,
conversation in
because
the
this,
kit.
because that. It's a bit kind of
I
obvious.
think it's really quite nice. They threw back to some dialogue from 2008 for that. Yeah, you could say it was seeded. It was deliberately seeded. Obviously, Russell Davies didn't know what he was going to do. But I like the way they came back to right where they picked up though.
And again,
So I can't remember.
I don't think Russell T Davies does any less exposition than Chris Chibnall. I just think
No, that was very noticeable.
he basically swamps it in jokes and character beats.
It's the same
and
thing
speed.
as Stephen Moffat. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all comes with a little bit to flavour it rather than
Yeah.
just
A spoonful
down
of
your
sugar helps the clunky exposition go down.
absolutely.
But see, I think if Jodie Whittaker's Doctor had not been this sort of ingenue Doctor almost, I think exactly the same dialogue would have worked in a different way there. So I think it was in the performance choice.
Mm.
But
So
to come back
yes,
to this,
go on.
Lee's not wrong. There was a sort of slight heavy-handedness about it in the sort of messaging, because it was definitely Russell T Davies, two fingers up to the not my Doctor, not my trans people. So it's definitely Russell T Davies making a big statement. But I 100% am behind him on that statement. So I didn't mind. It was a little bit like the end of Orphan 55, where she turns around to the camera and says, "And if you don't look after your planet won't look after you." And this was a bit like, well, if you don't look after your trans people won't look after you. And that was kind of, it could have been heavy-handed, but
That's
I
the clip
just
of the
felt
episode.
the
That's
way.
on promo.
Yeah, but in Orphan 55, it was, if you don't look after this planet, the working class are going to turn into mutants and destroy you if you're not careful.
Yeah,
But
and we
I
also
think
didn't
the
get-
thing
we also
about it
didn't get-
was,
we also didn't get Benny 60 times shouted at your face, did we? Benny.
but I think that the difference about it was that in Orphan 55, they made it an issue that gets talked about. In this, they made it something that was personal to the characters, and so it felt more intimate and more deserved, and therefore it didn't feel. So I agree with Lee. I think it was sort of, there was a heavy-handedness about it, but actually I thought it was one of the lesser heavy-handed things about the episode because it was integral to everything. One of the very first things you get when he comes out of the TARDIS at the start is he makes a reference back to being a woman, but he doesn't say I was a woman. I can't remember exactly what he says, but there's no reference to being female, but there's something inherent in the actual word that he uses that implies 100% that he's talking about having been female. And I thought that was the nice foreshadowing for the way this ended, because in the end, this episode turned out to all be about being male, then being female.
So that's the last thing JR was going to say before we score it, because that's a positive thing. If the three other people on the podcast, if you could say one positive thing about it, Lee, the whole episode.
Me?
What's the thing you liked most about the episode?
The fun. It was action packed. I was actually on the edge of my seat. I felt emotion again. Haven't felt that for a long time in Doctor Who. I was totally in with the dialogue. I love the characters, and I think the whole bringing up the trans thing and the binary thing, non-binary thing, all of that is very relevant, and it should be just part of the conversation. Let's stop trying to shove it everywhere. Just let it exist.
I love your definition of one thing. That's great.
You what? One thing.
I said
okay, other three. Let's see what one thing they come up with.
Okay, Simon.
I sat and watched it with my wife and my middle daughter, and we all sat there and really enjoyed it and spent the time together, and it was like a big warm hug. And it suddenly felt like everyone else is going to like Doctor Who again.
4 things, just saying.
No, that was one positive thing with an anecdote before it, which wasn't anything to do with music. So let's give him credit. John?
I think it's just that it's that Imperial phase Doctor Who made with the kind of the budget, with the sensibility of 2023. It's the old as the new. It's kind of the theme of the month. It's just the past is the present is the future. It's all coming into one, and it's great.
And what would you score it out of 10, John?
I would probably give it a 9 because it absolutely did enchant the whole family. We all sat there. Yep, we had a really good time.
And Simon, 9 out of 10?
For mentioning Pat Mills and Dave Gibbons on mainstream TV, I'm going to give it a 9.
And Lee?
Don't let me go last, Matt, for Christ's sake.
Okay, JR, what would you give it out of 10?
6. There were moments when I was bored and frustrated.
Okay,
and then,
Lee, what would you give it out of 10?
Some of it was great. So some of it was a 4 and some of it was an 8, and it balances out to a 6.
Lee?
I was going to give it an 8, but just to really annoy JR, I might just give it a 9.
Yeah, I'm the same.
It doesn't annoy me. You liked it. That's great.
I'm joking. A 9. It'll be a 9 because the more I watch it, the more I know I'm going to enjoy it and see a bit more in it.
Yeah, the bloody mindedness in me wants to give it a 9. I'm going to give it an 8 because I've got a sneaking suspicion that actually I'm going to like these specials more and more as they go through. I think the Star Beast, I love the fact it was an adaptation, and that's a really cool, funky thing to do. But the whole ET thing leaves me cold in general. That sort of alien crashing down, nostalgic, but it's not the sort of story I like.
It predates ET by 3 years, by the way, the story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I hope they do. I hope they do go into the past because those are the ones I like. I don't think they're going to, but I hope they do.
This was just a bit reductively urban. It was very urban, but it didn't even stretch out into suburbia.
I went all that way to get the last words being positive.
Yeah, he's doing what he did in Rose. It's in modern.
Oh yeah, I know, but we saw it in Rose 18 years ago.
And on that note, so we'll convene again next week, or I might not, but people will, to talk about what's it called again? The
Wild Blue Yonder.
Wild Blue Yonder. But until then, I was Matt.
I was John.
I was JR.
I was Lee.
And I was Simon.
Well done. And we will speak again soon.